The battle was a complete triumph. It was the end. It was the last monumental Eurovision Song Contest winner. The only problem was, of course, it wasn't fought at Waterloo. It was fought at a place called Mont Saint-Jean. Waterloo was Wellington's headquarters. Now, in the evening, Wellington and Blucher met. They met at a place called La Belle Alliance, which had over the years been a hotel, a pub, a knocking shop, a hotel again, and is now a hotel again. I think it's still a hotel, was it?
It's closed down.
Closed. Anyway, they met, and Blucher wanted to call the battle La Belle Alliance for obvious reasons. It was a beautiful alliance. Wellington was having none of it. As far as he was concerned, he'd won the battle, and he was going to call it, as he always did, after the place where his headquarters were, which was a very English-sounding place called Waterloo. So it's gone down in history of the English-speaking world as the Battle of Waterloo. The French don't call it anything. They barely acknowledge the fact that it exists. And the Germans, they weren't Germans then. There wasn't a Germany, there wasn't an Italy, there wasn't a Belgium. They call it the Battle of La Belle Alliance in allusion to the victory. And that's your day. By evening, they were bashing teeth out. They were trying to get what little sleep they could. They were trying to find some food. They hadn't eaten anything all day. The only thing I can tell you is that with 200,000 men and perhaps between 20 and 30,000 horses, the place must have hummed. My God, it must have hummed. Because there's bodies out, lying out in the open. The following day, it's quite sunny. And by the end of the week, you didn't have to ask where the battle was. Oh, it's over there. Right, I will answer, or I'll try to answer any questions. Oh, it's one other thing I want to show you. It's very rare. It's very rare, honestly. You've seen Sharp. Yeah, anybody seen Sharp? Yeah. The Baker rifle is a lot shorter than that. So if you put a body of riflemen into a square, they're so further, their head bayonets would be further back than an ordinary bayonet. So this is a Baker rifle sword bayonet, 23-inch blade. It's built like a sword, but it is in fact got all the fittings. Now I want you to imagine sticking this on the end of any sort of musket or weapon. It's not light. It would dip your barrel. And watch Sharp, every program you'll ever see, you will never see the soldiers in Sharp using one of those. They hated the damn thing because it's such a cumbersome weapon. On the other hand, you wouldn't want to get a sharp poke out of it. The bayonets very rarely killed anybody. Most people were either shot or cut with edged weapons, but not that one. Bayonets killed very few people. They were morale weapons, bayonets, and they were used for frightening horses. But that is a real one. That is the bayonet, wherever that went. Oh, there it is. They are real ones, not facsimiles. And of course, the rifleman would have sharpened it again to a razor point in order to see off the French. Right, any questions? While the sword bayonet is going around, any questions? Yes, madam, you've been wounded. You be careful what you say.
The soldiers,
Yes.
now, I mean, in wars that we had later, they were conscripted. Yes, but were they all mercenaries?
No, they were.
They
were volunteers. We never had conscription. The French had the levy en masse.
Well, we did in the Second World War.
Yeah, but we're a long way off the Second World War. We had religion by the Second World War. There was no religion at Waterloo. They were just chucked in big pits.
But people joined the army.
They joined the army. Yes.
Soldier.
Well, some of them were escaping prison, or
Right.
they
Well,
just very late.
choice.
Oh yeah, they got a choice. You got to be home or join the army. Yeah. You could starve or join the army.
Yeah.
And when you weren't fighting, you get 3 square meals a fortnight.
Yes.
Roughly every day, and grog and gin. And some of them enjoyed it. Some when the aristocracy had too many children, as most of them did, the younger members of the aristocracy hadn't got any employment. The eldest one would inherit the title and the money. The second one down was usually some sort of priest. Yeah, that's right, church. And they start running out of options then. So a lot of them joined the army. Of course, they were officers. They were immediately, they bought their commissions. Yeah. So a lot of these people were colonels in name only, couldn't command a battle.
So they didn't.
But they bought their commissions and they uniformed themselves, sometimes quite outrageously, But the PBI were by and large volunteers in
So it's
scum, Wellington called them, scum of the earth. Oh yes, hang 'em and flog 'em was his motto. If they didn't do what he told them, hang 'em and flog 'em. Not both, one or the other. So that was his idea. Mine, he said of his officers, I don't know what they do to the enemy, but by God, they frighten me.
So your darkest painting,
Yes.
dedicated to the Marcus Anglesey.
Yes, well, he was, yes, he became the Earl of Uxbridge. No,
Well,
he was the Earl of Uxbridge, and he
was the-
became the Marquis of Anglesey as a result of his contributions.
Yeah.
He had his legs shut off. He was married twice, he had 18 children. He was being notably unfaithful to Wellington's brother. He was having it away with Wellington's sister-in-law. And there was a certain coolness between them. So when he had his leg blown off or his knee shattered, by God, sir, I've lost my knee. Wellington is reputed to have said, by God, sir, so you have. That was the only comment he made. But he had several children after he had his knee, his leg cut off. After he had his leg cut off. And there's an artificial leg on Plas Newydd. But there's about 6 more in the cupboards in Plas Newydd because everybody who made artificial legs sent one to him because they couldn't put as seen on television. They could say as worn by the Marquis of Anglesey. So,
The Paget leg was still available
Yeah.
until about 1903.
yeah, it certainly was. It was one of the best ones with time articulated wooden leg.
They buried one, didn't they, in Portsmouth?
Yes, yeah.
His real leg was buried in
Yeah,
the
a real one.
of Monsieur Paris.
Yeah. Hyacinth Paris, to be precise, until 1933, when the last member of the Hyacinth Paris family died. And although he told the authorities, the successor told the authorities they'd reburied it, they hadn't. And when the widow Hyacinth Paris opened his bureau, there were these bones and a note saying what they were. So she burnt them in the the central heating boiler, whatever it was, the furnace, because she'd had enough of these plastic bones. It caused a diplomatic incident. The plaque is at the Waterloo Museum, and half the people who go around think the leg is buried there, but it never was. It was simply a willow tree blew over, up came the leg, down went the plaque, and it was never replaced. Everything was wounded or killed. The trees died in huge numbers because they were full of lead. They had a lead poisoning. Napoleon, people wonder whether Napoleon really did eat his wallpaper and got arsenic poisoning. Well, no, he didn't. Most people don't eat their wallpaper, and Napoleon certainly didn't. He almost certainly died of stomach cancer, which was endemic in his family. His father died of it, and several other members of the family died of it. And he was showing signs of illness at Waterloo. When he came to make his memoir, he blamed everybody. He blamed Ney for losing the battle. He blamed Grouchy for losing the battle. He blamed God because he made it rain for losing the battle. And his apologists, of which there are several, claim that he got piles and cystitis. Well, if you spend 18 hours in a saddle with piles, you are doing amazingly well.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody could couldn't sit on a chair for 18 hours, let alone in a saddle. But he was not a well man. Him and Wellington were exactly within months the same age. But Napoleon was worn out. And what wore him out mostly was the retreat from Moscow. Because he couldn't claim to have won that particular encounter. And he hadn't. Right, any more questions? Sorry.
Yeah, what you mentioned briefly there, I mean, what happened to the bodies then?
The bodies were stripped and they the Allied army forced the local peasants to dig great big pits, and they were thrown in and forgotten, leveled and gone. In fact, for years after, the corn grew extremely high because it was
Fertilized.
bodies and phosphates and goodness knows what. The horses were piled up and burnt. It is highly likely that several bodies were, a good number of bodies were also piled in amongst the horses and burnt. It is also highly likely, particularly for some reason among the Prussian army, that if the Prussians came across their own kind very badly wounded, they mercy killed, and nobody said anything. It was the done thing. You knew who was going to recover and who wasn't, and they would just be executed or not. That's the wrong word. They put out of their misery. That's a very good word.
Is the location of the burial pits known?
No. Well, yeah, in general, but not. There's no markers, no grave markers. There's no religion here.
No.
The coldest line I ever read and I've read a lot about the Napoleonic Wars. It's in that book over there. It's called The Journal of the Waterloo Campaign by Mercer. On the following morning, his gunners came up and we want to bury Driver Crummond. And nobody ever said that. Nobody ever wanted to bury them. That was hard work. These are soldiers. They don't want to bury, why on earth did they want to bury Driver Crummond? And it turns out that Crummond had had the back of his head completely taken away by a cannonball. So his face, which was still upright, had been staring out at them all night long, and it gave them all the utter creeps. But it was dark and they couldn't do anything about it. So they actually begged to bury Driver Crummond, and Mercer records in his journal, he was quickly buried and equally quickly forgotten. And that sums up, what people thought of the British Army.
What's your opinion of Wellington as a commander?
He's an extremely good commander. I would think he was probably one of the most horrible men you could wish to meet. An arrogant, snob, who would look down his nose at absolutely everybody. But he was a stunningly good commander, and he never lost a gun, which was quite an achievement. He lost a few Portuguese guns, but because they were Portuguese, it didn't count. But by and large, the French soldiers loved Napoleon. There is no doubt that the British soldiers did not love Wellington in the same way. Even the BBC reporters didn't. And they respected him great. Come on, keep up. They respected him greatly because of what he knew, and they trusted him to do the right thing, not to put them in jeopardy. And he would not waste lives. Napoleon was a waster of lives. Marching First Corps, he knew that many of them were going to be shot down to death because you're going across effectively an open field. I know the corn's 5 foot high, but you're effectively going across a field into a gun line, and they're going to shoot at you and they're going to kill a lot. Didn't bother Napoleon at all. He would send his men to their death. Wellington didn't do that, mainly because he hadn't got enough to lose lots. It would have been the end of his army. But he fought this reverse on the right side of the hill all through the Spanish Peninsular War. Waterloo was only the culmination of the Napoleonic Wars. 1806, Salamanca, Talavera, Vimero, all sorts were fought roughly in the same style. And Napoleon was an attacking general. Wellington was a defensive general who husbanded his resources very, very well indeed. And he learned how to do that in India. 2 battles, Asai and Seringapatam, where he fought huge, 10,000 Indians faced up to 3,000 or so Europeans. And the Europeans won because of the tactics they adopted and the fact they got rifles, musket. That thing is accurate from here to that red car. I might hit the red car. I probably would hit the red car. I certainly wouldn't be able to hit the driver. And with a pistol, I wouldn't be able to hit you. The only use of pistols was to put horses out of their misery, right up against the horde and bang. But he carried pistols, the horsemen carried pistols, but they were of no use. Lances were deadly. A sword in capable hands was deadly. These musket balls flattened when they hit you. They made horrendous injuries. If they hit a bone, they'd flatten because they're made of lead, they're soft. But they're very low velocity. So you could be hit. And whereas now, even with silliness in America with a 6-gun, the Cowboys, they hit you with a 6-gun slug and they fall over. That didn't happen. It's so low velocity, if you were hit with a musket ball or a 6-gun slug, you wouldn't fall over. It wouldn't be enough force to knock you over. You might fall over because you're dead. But then, not because you have been knocked over. Whereas a modern infantry rifle will knock 3 people over. It's so high velocity. Just a different world. No communication, man on horse. No point blowing a bugle. Once those 80 guns went off, it would be the loudest thing those young people, the soldiers, ever heard in their lives. Thunder would be the next loudest. And your local herd of cows making wind would have been the 3rd loudest.
Did everybody have a weapon?
No,
or did they wait till?
When the soldiers in Hougoumont, the French soldiers who got in, had been dispatched, there was left one little drummer boy, and his weapon was his drum. But this phrase drummer boy is misleading because there are always people in any army who are much better without a weapon, because with a weapon they are a danger to themselves and all around them. Never mind the enemy. So they became drummers. And so drummer boys, the boy bit that's wrong. Yes, 8, 10, 12-year-olds did march, banging the powder charge, and they stood just as much chance of being mown down by artillery or musketry as anybody else. But some of them drummer boys, the word boy was stretching it a bit, and illiterate troops could make sergeants, but if they made sergeant, they became the two sergeants on either side of a flag bearer. Right, so you'd have a flag bearer with the flag of the regiment, and on either side of him, guarding him theoretically, an illiterate sergeant. And they went through them at fine rates, because in battle they'd be shot at first, try and capture the eagle on top of it. So yes, being a flag guard in a battle was a fairly dangerous occupation. Sergeants were armed with a very strange weapon called a spontoon. And the reason it's a spontoon is to crash the muskets down. There's a natural tendency, something like this. I suppose you all know this is, you open it, put some powder in, pull that up, that's half cocked. You pull the trigger now, you're going off half cocked. That's where the saying comes from. Put powder in there, shut the dog, powder in, spit the ball in, ram the rest of the wadding down to stop. If you don't, you go like that. The ball will run out the bottom. And then you go to full cock, and you present. Now, this is going to be a huge puff of smoke here, which you're going to get in your eyes. So the natural thing to do is go like that.
So
If you're not aiming at anything, you're only aiming at that great huge lump of French people over there. So the natural tendency is to do that. So the sergeant's 9-foot spontoon was used to smash the muskets down. That's where you want them. So when you go like that, you're at least at gut height. So sergeants would carry this old-fashioned, for all intents and purposes, a short pike. That's what it was, a short pike. There's a real proper pike heading on it. A spontoon.
when you talk about a sponger,
Yeah.
is that when we say people are spongy, does that word come from
I don't
sponger
know.
on a
That's an
gun?
interesting thought. I've no idea.
And what did they do?
Well, you had
did they
to
do?
put. Yeah, it sounds strange. The sponge would be a bucket of water, and you put water down the cannon's barrel on a sponge. Because if you didn't, when you fire these things, there could easily, and very often was, some residual gunpowder burning. And if you ram the next shot down and it's burning, it'll go off. So I don't think it comes from that, but I don't actually know the derivation. By the way, it's the same with this. If that didn't go off, it would be a flash in the pan. If you pull the trigger, you got the butt, it's a flash in the pan. And one musket was found with 14 rounds rammed down the barrel. Because in here, if I fired it and it didn't go off, it'd say it hasn't gone off. You'd know. But in the heat of battle, when there's 300 or 400 of you all doing the same, you wouldn't necessarily realize that your gun hadn't gone off. So you'd ram it again. Now, the only thing with that is the ramrod must have been getting further and further and further out of the end of the barrel. You'd have thought at some point, you'd have been, my God, that ramrod's growing. And the other thing that rookies did was to fire the ramrod at the enemy. Now, that was a real problem because you can't load it now. And apparently your sergeant or a sergeant major would invite you to go and fetch it. If it's halfway to the enemy, that could be an interesting exercise as well. What you actually did was find somebody who was dead and steal theirs. But yeah, many around. In fact, one of the sharp Sergeant, what's his name, actually does that. He shoots, 2 men are sent to attack him. He shoots one, then he does something called running ball. So he doesn't ram it, he bangs it on the ground with the ramrod still in it and shoots the guy, gets the ramrod through his throat. And people go, making that up. They aren't. That's how it would easily be done. And that weapon of his is it fires pistol bullets. The volley gun with about 8 barrels. The only thing wrong with that is he seems to load it with amazing speed, because with 8 barrels, it'd take you could fire 3 shots a minute. So if he's got 8 barrels and he has to load all 8 before he can fire it again, it's going to be about 3 minutes before he's even close to firing it again. But they seem to blaze away with enormous enthusiasm on sharp.
The other
There you
reason
are.
why the teeth are so good is that soldiers with missing teeth are rejected. You have to have good teeth.
Oh, to cut the top, yeah, to bite the top
off the cartridge.
off the cartridge paper. That's where the name cartridge
If you
paper.
got missing teeth, you couldn't bite. the
In
top.
fact, some people knock their teeth out, stop them getting called up.
Yeah.
Bowman, the French, when they captured
Yeah.
Bowman, they cut fingers off.
Fingers off.
So you couldn't,
Couldn't draw you back.
there's no messing about in these days, you know, people could think of every way. One or two other facts I want to tell you, we talk about horses. Getting everybody there, getting the fodder there, getting the food there, which by nice they didn't because the army moved faster than the commissary. But they're on record a battalion of British infantry, consisting of 27 officers, required 70 horses to service them. So the colonel had 5, one for his batman and one for his undergroom, and a spare charger, and one for his, his groom's spare charger. Major's got 4, captain's got 3, and lieutenant's 2. So you've got a boat full of blasted horses to serve one infantry battalion. Absolute nonsense. Absolute crazy, but that's how they did it. Ponsonby, Lieutenant General Sir William Ponsonby was killed. I mean, he was killed by the French because they caught him. But he really was killed because he refused to ride his charger into battle because the compensation for a horse was 25 guineas. And his chargers were worth vastly more than 25 guineas. So he borrowed a bay hack and went into battle on a bay hack. And once he got stuck in the mud, the horse wasn't strong enough to get him out of it. And so he was ridden down by some lancers or a dragoon. Or shot by somebody, we don't know. There's 5 different versions. The accepted version is he was killed by a lancer because it's just a poke. I can get you from here. You can shout and swear and raise a sword, but you can't do much else. They're a very nasty poke. I saw 2 on sale, and I thought of buying them. But I thought if I drive around Roseau with a 9-foot player sticking out the car window, it's not long before somebody wants to know what I'm doing with them. And they were 600 quid, so I couldn't afford them. So I gave that up. But this is fun. This is fun. Right, any more questions? Sorry. Beg pardon. I think we're done.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. I think a round of applause.
Oh, sorry. One more. Beg question. Your local history group. 2 people of the Waterloo Association, of which we are members, Janet and David Bromley, wrote or researched Wellington's men. This is a list. Very comprehensive list of all of the Peninsular War and Waterloo campaign soldiers who died back in somewhere civilized. So it's not just Britain, it's New Zealand, Australia, wherever they went. And if you think you have a relative or friend, or you want to look somebody up locally, then look it up in here. And as far as I'm aware, bear with me a second. There are 2 volumes. Doorstop books, I call them. Right, there is a CD. Now, I am imagining CD is a CD of the book, but if you would like to have that, and if any of your members want to look it up to see if they have any relations, then please do so. If I ever want it back, I'll know where it is, but at the moment, I'm the chance of me looking at it, a remote